Unafraid demo number 2. From demo to disc, this is Anatomy of a Song.
Can we take it from the top?
Hi there, and welcome to Anatomy of a Song. I'm Greg Smith. I'm the guy who wrote it and performed it, and this is a song called And I Answer. This is on my album, Get Back to You. And I Answer began as a poem by Kathy Polk. The original title was Unafraid. It was about a number of things, facing your fears and moving from one location to another, seeking someone on the other end of that move, and also the writer's self-image. She and I discussed whether the poem might make for a good song. Now, transforming a poem into a song lyric requires extracting the heart of the poem, in other words, what it means at its core, and then fitting that heart into a lyric format. This poem had a good heart, both figuratively and literally, and so the process took its next steps. As often happens with songwriting, sometimes a melody or combination of chords will appear out of nowhere. Such is the case with this. So on October 6th, I sat down at the piano and played what appeared in real time as presented in cut number 1. The recording was made by simply placing my iPhone on top of the piano and using their voice memo app. And this went on for about 8 minutes, this demo, and it jogged in different directions. I was searching as I played it. The chords were the most important part of this stage of the demo process, but you can hear what I call a la-la track in the background, where I'm just, going la, 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 just kind of playing around with the melody because the lyrics aren't formed yet. And so that's happening in the background as I experiment with various melody lines. So let's listen to a bit of that. This is Unafraid. Another life calls, I answer unafraid. Another life, another began to appear toward the end of what you just heard and is further explored in this next cut. It also has the beginnings of a chorus. The next bit is experimenting with the poem's existing lyrics. This will be rewritten later on to pull out the meaning of the song and fit it into the lyric format. But at this point, I'm still working with the concept of unafraid. This is further on. This is now changing the lyrics a little bit. Another life is calling me. I answer unafraid. I answer in the silence. I answer unafraid. Another life without the fear. Another life of time. I answer in the silence. I answer unafraid. And the couplet to lead back into it. down that day, I continued work concentrating on the melody, which I brought down a few steps into my range. And a note here, range is a funny thing. Range, the word. Some songs sound best in a certain key, but we move the key up or down depending on the singer's range. There's a great story out there about Hotel California and how the person who wrote the music, a guy named Don Felder, wrote it in one key and presented it to Don Henley, who was the singer of the group, the Eagles. And Henley couldn't sing it in the key that Felder wrote it, so they changed the key. And what you hear is that change on the album. But let's listen to this and see how I was playing around with the range and moving it down just a few steps. This is Unafraid demo number 2. This version so far was nice, but didn't quite fit the lyrics or even the spirit of the song. This version that you just heard actually may end up being an entirely different song in the future. So I may pull that out and set that aside and then come back to it later on. But for now, the song sat for a couple of days, and then I revisited it on the 21st of October when I explored a new set of chords and a new rhythm on an open G guitar, which happened to be lying around in my studio. This new version becomes the basis of the eventual accepted chord structure, but the melody line is still struggling to fit into the original poem, and that's going to change too as well. You'll also notice in this section coming up that I start to experiment with kind of a different kind of chunky syncopated rhythm. Let's listen. And I now bring it down to within my range in this next cut. This is And I Answer with lyrics. I've taken it down one step to take it down one step. Keeping the D bass to the B minor here. What survives out of all this is the interplay between B minor and D. The interlude chords will soon change, but the next big idea comes the next day, the 22nd of October, with the idea that I had of a giddy-up rhythm, kind of a Ghost Riders in the Sky on steroids thing. It's playing around in my head. So, and this track, next track you'll hear, I play it poorly, but the idea is to get the concept down before I forget the concept. So, this is what I played. And I answer as a kind of a gallop. Okay, play it. In this version, I also start to play with percussion to kind of mirror the giddy-up guitar part. C, D to D. We'll gallop by Larry on that. And so on to the next day, 23rd October, where I start to work on the form. This time I'm at the piano, working to solve the problem of getting between the verses. You'll also hear a new bridge that I introduced in F sharp minor, but in this version, I still haven't found a way to get from the bridge to the verse and back to the verse to the bridge, but I'm still working on it, but here's what that sounds like. The same as before. And the bridge solo, F sharp minor. I should mention, this is composing in real time. At this point, I'm just sort of following my hands and seeing what comes out of them. Later on that day, I figured out the jump between the bridge and the verse. This is version number 2. And this is taken down one step to A minor, and I figured out the jump back to from the bridge. So the body of it is... bridges, B minor, F, that's really the thing, because it jumps between the F and the C. You keep the C in there, and it takes you back to the A minor third. Like that's C. That's C, which is the root note of the C, which is the root note of the C chord, becomes the third of the A minor chord, and that's the link to get you from the bridge back to the verse. And that completed work on the song for that day. The next day, the 24th of October, I start to work on the melody. I'm working back on guitar now. I'm playing this at a much slower pace, which makes it easier to play with the words in the space of the bars. What's here is the first attempt at fitting the poem into the song lyrics. In addition, the poem kept coming back to the line, "And I answer." To me, this was the central core of the poem and the central core of the idea of the poem, and you can hear me introducing it into the new lyrics. Let's listen. And I answer on the 24th of October. This is a new sort of, with just a scratch vocals. I've written one verse and kind of the chorus. It's taking different shape. Slower. No life is calling to me now. Be the me I knew was meant to be. The road has many twists and turns ahead. But I know it'll set me free. Oh, and I answer. Oh, and I answer. In this next section, I head back to the piano and work out the melody and firm up the changes for the bridge. Okay, now this would be the piano version with the newly worked out bridge. I'll just take it from the bridge. This is the bridge part. 2, 3, 4, and... I did want to note here that the entire time that I'm doing this demo and all demos that I do, in my mind, I'm adding and subtracting other instruments. I'm starting to hear the entire song, not just the little bit of melody or chord changes that I'm doing either on guitar or piano, but I'm also in my head hearing the drums and percussion part. In this case, I heard the giddy up guitar part and also a tremolo guitar accent, slide guitar, things like that. I should also note that at times, this is overall kind of a messy process. The ideas are coming so quickly that sometimes I have trouble keeping up and getting them down on tape. Well, not really tape, but that's what engineers sometimes call the digital process such as this. So the playing isn't pristine. It's more just to get the idea down so that I can remember these variations and additions and subtractions later on in the process. So before I gave up for that day, I laid down a simple arpeggio part that was meant as a possible fade out in the tag, and the tag is the last part of the song, or perhaps to start the song. This is what that sounds like. This is a little tag guitar part for an I answer. It's going to... that. Having played with that, I created a second version of that arpeggio, and this is what that sounds like. Tag guitar number 2. So that completes the actual demos that I recorded on my phone. And in the days ahead, 2 major things happened. I sat down and rewrote and finished the lyrics, meaning I took the poem and pulled out the bits that would fit lyrically into a song format. I retitled the song And I Answer, and it tells the story now of being pulled to a new location and a new home, leaving behind your youthful mistakes and what I call crippling doubt. Number 2, I take the song into the studio. I create a digital file in Pro Tools, and the digital file is the new home of what will become the completed song. I settled on the tempo as I did this, which is 128 beats per minute, and I also, in the studio now, laid down a basic track, 2 tracks of acoustic guitar plus a bass guitar. Here's what that sounds like. 1, 2, 1, 2. also wanted to get at least a first pass at the giddy-up guitar, which to me is the soul of the song, and that part kept buzzing around my head. And so I called my friend Chip, a very talented musician, I should say, 22 instruments and counting, to come over to the studio and lay down what I call a reference track, and this is what he did. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So that track is just a reference track. Chip's going to come back and do a more polished version of that at some point. So in the meantime, it was time to address some of the other bits and pieces of the song. It was time first for percussion. So there's a snare drum which mirrors the energy of that giddy up part. Our band's drummer, Larry Sheneman, played that part twice so that I could double it during the mix. No easy feat here. That's tough to play that part for 4 minutes or more, and then play it again. So hats off to Larry. I've also added the bass guitar here for reference, and this is where I was at that point. There was one more signature sound I was going after, kind of a tremolo guitar riff. And so I added that in this next stage, and here it is. Now we're riding the Purple Sage. So the rest of the process is adding and subtracting instruments, synthesizers, bells, other guitars, etc. The song really does tell you what it wants, much like during the composing process. And always the last step, that's when I add the lead vocal and harmony vocals. I fuss over those the most, so I save that for last. And that is how it's done. And that's our episode for today. Anatomy of a Song was written and produced at The Sawmill in Blairsville, Georgia. As always, feel free to contact me with your questions and or thoughts on your own composing and recording process. Our email address is, it's one long word, anatomyofasongpodcast@gmail.com. I'm your host, Greg Smith. We'll see you next time on Anatomy of a Song.